Michele Defilippo. What do you know about the book business, the publishing business? What's the difference? I opened up with that first conversation. Michelle's is in the book business, the publishing business since 1972. Her origins go pretty deep. She graduated from school and she was going to get a job in marketing and got an interview at a publisher in New York City, and that just started everything. She's seen the way Amazon has just taken over. First, Steve Jobs, with the Mac, with typesetting, changed her company, and now Amazon is responsible for 80% of all the books sold worldwide. Incredible impact. But we talk about the difference. Prince has this great quote where they ask him, how's the music business or the record business? And he says, I'm not in the record business, I'm in the music business. So what can authors do when they have a great idea? Where do they go? We're inundated with kind of these, bottom feeders saying, we'll publish your book for tens of dollars or whatever it may be. But how do you find a great publisher? When you go down the self-publishing route, do you still need someone to help you? It's an interesting take on an industry that's made such a shift. When I was a kid, huge bookstores. Now they're much smaller and not so much, but we hear things. I'm a big advocate of listening to books, audio books. I wonder where your feeling is on this and where the industry is. And do you have a book inside you? And what do you do with that? Thanks so much for listening.
Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word, discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission? How do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision, growth through learning from others.
Talk to you, Michele Defilippo. Thank you for your time today. What's the difference between the book industry and the publishing industry?
Well, publishing is really simple. Publishing simply means to make your book available to the public, right? And back in the day, we only had traditional publishers who could do that. It wasn't possible for an author to obtain distribution in any other way except to go through a traditional publisher. So Amazon changed all that. All of a sudden, anyone who wanted to put a book up on Amazon could do so. The original thought was that the author was the publisher. The author took on all the responsibilities of the publisher, such as hiring the experts to produce the book, and then the author would earn all of the net revenue from sales. Terrific, right? That was an earthquake in the publishing industry. Well, over the last 20 years, everything has gotten all mixed up and all screwed up, if you ask me. And now we have self-publishing companies, hybrid publishers, independent publishing companies, whatever they call themselves. But what they're doing is they're charging the author to produce the book, and they're also taking money out of the author's pocket every time a book is sold, which is not financially advantageous to the author. And from my discussions with authors and my own research, authors are making something like $2 a book when they should be making $6 per book every time they sell a book when they work with one of these middlemen. So around the beginning of this year, I decided I can't take this anymore. I have to get out there and remind people what original self-publishing meant, and that it still exists if they work with companies like mine, which I guess you could call author service companies, publishing service companies, but we don't take any money on the back end when an author sells a book. We just help them get going, and then from there, they are the publisher.
So Prince has this great quote where somebody asked him about, how's the record business? And he said, I'm not in the record business, I'm in the music business. So, I mean, has the same thing happened in books and publishing as it has in the music industry?
Yes, and I think the reason is that authors feel overwhelmed. At least the ones I talk to, they don't know, and why should they know? They don't know how to produce a book. right? It's a brand new field for them. And so they hunt around until they find somebody who says, we'll do it all for you and we'll pay you a royalty. Well, that's a familiar term, a royalty. Authors expect to be paid royalties, but that's the wrong word, because if you work with an author service company like mine, you don't get a royalty. You get the full compensation from the sale of your book. Royalties are something less. When you work with a middleman publisher, they distribute the book from their account. They get the sales reports, they get the revenue in their bank account, and then they pay you something less.
Hmm. So in the music industry, an artist, author, whatever you want to call them, creates the song. They put it out, and it starts getting streamed, and then they get a 0.0000, a fraction of a penny per stream. But that's very different from a book, correct? Because people are actually buying books, or even if it's online, and then they get a piece of that. You really can't stream a book. Is that correct?
Well, you can sell a book, right? But the I guess the key point is whether or not there's someone in the middle between you and your distribution.
Hmm.
And there doesn't have to be someone, at least in publishing anymore, there doesn't have to be someone in the middle, because that's what Amazon changed, right?
Hmm.
Everybody in the world, every author can open up their own KDP account and Ingram Spark account and have distribution in their own name and earn all of the net revenue from sales. If you work with a middleman, they're going to take a cut of those earnings.
Amazon KDP is the Kindle distribution.
It's kdp.com. It's owned by Amazon.
Right.
It's their print on demand division.
Are people buying books? I mean, as a kid, I can remember huge bookstores, Michelle, and we don't see that anymore.
Yeah, Amazon has pretty much taken over book sales. They 80% of books are sold on Amazon.
Wow.
Yeah, it's and that's, I guess that's progress. That's fine, right? But somebody in the self-publishing industry long ago, Dan Poynter, who was basically the founder of self-publishing, he said, in if you go to Amazon, you can find any book you're looking for. If you go to a bookstore, you can find the book you didn't know you wanted.
Mm.
So there's both sides of it.
That's true, because I'd walk into the bookstore and wouldn't have had some idea, but then all of a sudden, hey, this looks good, and yeah, that's right. It's very different. And then magazines was a big area of the bookstore, and that's pretty much gone,
Yeah,
correct?
magazines are pretty much gone. They've gone online now for the most part.
And audiobooks are still audio, but they're still books, but they're just the audio version.
And audiobooks are booming right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
because
are
it
booming.
allows people to multitask.
Right. Just like podcasters, right? I mean, we're 4 million strong now. There's so many podcasters. There's such low barrier to entry. Um, so let's talk about. So the book industry is in itself. Is it? It's hard to say if it's strong as ever, but it's. I mean, we've always known these master publishers, and I think there's, I don't know, 3 or 4 of them. They've all consolidated.
Yes.
And what's the benefit of working with them? You see big, celebrities coming out with books from these big publishers. Why
Well,
do that? Why don't they just self-publish?
Well, major publishers do still play a role, right? The one thing they do best is to produce a top quality book, right? They
Mm,
haven't given up the standards in terms of great editorial and
that's good to hear.
design and so
Oh,
forth.
good.
And they also have distribution to bookstores. It's very difficult for an independent author, a self publisher, to get on the shelf in a bookstore.
Uh,
And if you think of it from the bookstore's perspective, they don't want to deal with they have thousands of books on the shelf. They don't want to deal with thousands of authors. They want to go to
mm,
one or two distributors, and
mm,
that's who the traditional publishers use. And they want to get hundreds of books on one invoice, so they don't have the administrative hassles
mm, mm,
around that. And bookstores don't put junk on the shelf.
mm.
They don't. But it is possible for independent authors to produce a book at the traditional publisher level. That's what we do. And also earn all of the net revenue from sales. And that's what we help our customers do.
So if you're an author and you have an idea, and I've heard many of my friends say, I got a novel inside me, or, I'd love to write about this. And whether they're worthy or not is really up to, I guess, the reader more than they are. I've heard you talk about the primary thing is to create a great product.
Yes, you do have to create a great product. It's
Above
fun.
all.
It's fundamental, right? Whatever business you're in, you need to offer your buyers quality, and if you don't
Mm,
do that, they're going to retaliate with bad reviews. So, and that's where things have gone wrong in self-publishing. There's the narrative out there now is that you should format the book yourself, you should design your own cover, or else
mm, mm,
hire somebody who charges you $50 or $100 to design a cover. That's not how a major publisher produces a
mm,
book.
mm,
There's a lot
mm.
of effort and expertise that goes into it that's just unknown to most people. You know,
Okay, so an author's got a great idea. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Author's got a great idea, and they're saying things like, well, hey, J.K. Rowling made $1 billion, so can I. Stephen King and, all these, big writers have made millions on it, so I'm sure I can as well with this idea.
Well, I think it's great that okay, so my argument is with all the people who tell authors you can get away with putting out a bad book. And sometimes authors, it's unfortunate, they shop on price. They
Mm,
decide how much they want to spend to produce a book, and that may not, in many cases, be a reasonable budget. They'll find somebody who will work at that level, but it's not necessarily a good book. And some of these middlemen that I talked about, they don't know anything about book publishing. They're entrepreneurs who saw a huge market and decided to jump in and serve that market.
hmm,
But they don't know first thing about creating a good book. Now, there are good middleman publishers who produce good books, and there's no one answer that's right for everybody, but a lot of authors are being misled, and that's my soapbox.
hmm. But the expectation that writing a book makes a lot of money, is it justified? Is it often true? Is it often not?
No, it's difficult for an independent author to make a lot of money in a retail environment, okay?
Mm,
Because retailers take 40 to 55% of the cover price.
wow.
Most people don't know that. You can make a lot of money on a book if you use that book to promote your business, a consulting practice, use it
Right.
in some other way where you are selling directly to your customers without a retailer.
It's
Now,
very interesting. I'm sorry.
yeah, there are some companies that promise authors a bestseller, and that's a variation of the scam that's going on right now.
Mm.
These books,
Define bestseller.
a bestseller is, well, it used to be data gathered by the Nielsen company from
Yeah.
a survey of bookstore sales, books that were selling well, right? Now it means that somebody gamed Amazon's algorithm and got, 200, 300, 400 people to buy the book in 45 minutes, and Amazon's computer puts up a bestseller tag. And from that point on, people you never heard of say, I'm a best-selling author. It's not true. It's ridiculous.
Hmm.
And from an author's point of view, you worked for months or years on that book. Do you want to be a bestseller for 45 minutes, or do you want to sell books for a long period of time and get your message out to people the legitimate way?
Hmm.
I don't know.
And how about these lists from like the New York Times? How are they? How are they done?
That's legitimate.
I
Although it
see.
although it can also be gamed.
Huh. How so?
So, some authors will work with a PR agency, let's say, and
Uh,
again, the PR agency will go out and buy 20,000 books, and everybody chalks it up to a marketing expense, and that's reported on the bestseller list.
so an author has a great idea of a book. What decisions do they have to make at that point?
They have to decide. There's really two tracks for self publishing. There's the hobbyist track, where you may be want to produce this book for your own enjoyment as a hobby for your friends and family for a very limited audience. And then there's the business track.
Hmm.
And either track is fine, but the problem comes in when an author wants to take the hobbyist approach to book production and sell it as if the book were a business. That's where things start to go wrong, because
Hmm.
because the public understands a quality book. If they spend their hard-earned money on a book that's poorly edited, filled with typos, they may not even buy the book if the cover's not designed well and it doesn't have a good title. So there's a lot of expertise that goes into producing a book at the traditional publisher level.
Hmm. And as far as fiction and nonfiction, does that play into the hobbyist and business?
No, we work on all kinds of books, everything from textbooks to children's books to fiction, nonfiction, memoirs. That doesn't really matter because there's a market for all of those. The important thing is to do it well.
So I get inundated, and there's many out there that says, "Hey, I can write. You can write your book for $500, $1,000. We'll get it out there. We'll show you how to put it up on Amazon, and obviously you pay for what you get. But some of the red flags when you start to hear things like royalties and things like this, what do you got to look out for if you're an author?
There's several red flags. The word royalty is one of them, because any entity that is paying you a royalty is probably publishing the book in their name, not your name. So
Mm,
they are the publisher of your book and they're getting more money than they're paying you in that royalty. Another red flag is a free ISBN. Some of these companies will say, I'll give you a free ISBN. Now, the ISBN is the model number for your book. It's the way the book industry tracks inventory and sales. So anyone who's giving you a free ISBN is giving you one of their ISBNs. It's
mm.
not registered to you. You should always buy your ISBNs in your own name. And in the United States, the only place to do that is at Bowker. Right.
Now, KDP, so ISBN is a unique number for each book.
Correct. For each, even for each format of your book, hardcover, softcover,
Uh,
audiobook, each would get their own ISBN.
and so when you set up an account at KDP, Amazon, do they issue an ISBN number as well?
Well, Amazon, you should always purchase your own ISBNs. Amazon also assigns for ebooks, particularly their own what they call an ASIN number.
Oh, I've seen that.
And
Yes,
so that they have their own way of tracking inventory and sales.
Amazon,
Yeah,
Amazon number. Yeah,
ASIN.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the whole what's it called? Print on demand. That's really helped the authors.
Oh my gosh, it's an earthquake. Back in the day when I started, if you wanted to print a book, you had to print 5,000 copies to get a decent price, a decent unit price for that book, and then you'd have 5,000 books delivered to your garage, and that's when you would find the typo. So and you were
Ugh.
stuck if you didn't sell books. You had books in your garage forever.
Mm,
But
mm,
print on demand does not print the book until it is sold. So the author no longer has to invest in inventory. They can
it's
take that
incredible.
capital and use it for marketing.
And when you write, let's say an author, so I'm in the tech business and I have, lots of colleagues that want to write a book or going to write a book and they go down this self-publishing role. I don't, some of them have released books and, some of them are good and some of them are not. So what do they need to look for? How do they find a quality partner like yourself?
That's the issue. Okay,
Yes.
if you go online and you search for self-publishing or book publishing or what have you, you're more likely to find these middleman publishers than somebody like us, because they can spend more money to dominate the search engines. It's as simple as that. So I would say look for an author services company. You can also work with freelancers. What we do, we're project managers. So I've got the team in place to make it easy for you to produce that book. We take on all the headaches of finding the qualified editors and designers and
Hmm.
proofreaders and ebook formatters and all of that. You can also manage that many people yourself if you're inclined to do so. But I would say you just have to do your research. You're not likely to find the best people on Fiverr be-
Right.
because the price competition is so fierce there that good people just don't participate.
Let's talk about the editing process. I mean, this can be very painstaking, can it, Michelle? I mean, it can take a while.
It is. It's an editor is invaluable because they're going to see the things. They're an objective observer.
Right.
They're going to see the things that you don't see in your own writing. Everybody needs an editor. The Pope has an editor.
Ah,
Stephen King has an editor. I promise you. And I have had authors come to me who say, my manuscript is perfect. Can you give me a break on the editing? Because I know the editor's not going to find much. And then that Word file comes back with a flood of track
right.
changes all over the place because the editor finds a lot more than you can see in your own writing.
Yeah, and it can be a painful process. I think I heard you say that one time one of your authors rejected all the editing notes.
Yes, only once in my whole career since 1972. uh, what can you say?
Yeah, what can you say? What kind of discussion is that? Well, how about we meet in the middle? What?
I can only make my case. I can't tell people what to do. It's their book.
Right, right, right. Yeah, you have an interesting history. You graduated, I believe, from community college, 2 years, and then you were going to get a job, but you just happened to get an interview at a book publisher, and it just kind of launched your career in '72. I think you said.
Yeah. I don't ask me where all those years went. I really don't know. But yes, I was going. I fully intended to work at ad agencies. I had studied advertising art, and I got an interview at Crown Publishing, and that's how I got into the publishing end of things.
And I heard you say you were a typesetter for a while, but then Mr. Jobs took all that away.
Yes, I in New York I was making what at the time was great money. I was making $10 an hour as a freelance designer. And then my husband and I got the idea to move to Phoenix, where my grandparents had retired. We loved it. It was clean. It was new. Everything New York wasn't.
Right.
And I just made we were young. I made the assumption I can find a job anywhere. Well, that didn't turn out to be true. I came to Phoenix and I couldn't make more than minimum wage. And I was freelancing for minimum wage basically in Phoenix. And one day I was sitting in my typesetter's office because in those days, typesetting was done by a separate business. It's hard to describe now. So I was sitting waiting for her to finish up my job. And I just asked her, what do you make? What do you charge per hour? And she said, $50 an hour. And I was making $4 an hour at the time.
Wow.
So I ran home to my husband. I said, I know how to type. We can open a typesetting business. And that's what we did.
For how long?
But 13 years,
How?
13 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that was fun. I love that part of my career. And then one by one, my customers went away because they went out and bought Apple computers and started doing it themselves.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So if you had your way, Michelle, how would you change the publishing industry?
I would encourage authors to just do more homework before they fall for a sales pitch and I would encourage them to look at the design samples from whatever company
Mm,
that they hire, and not just look at the samples, but look at the samples on a separate screen relative to what major publishers are doing. Look at the book
uh,
covers, for example, from major publishers, because you should see a difference if you do that.
okay, so let's say an author has a great idea. They get some of these publishers, not the big ones, but some of these, I don't know, hybrid mid-range publishers. They interview two or three of them, and they talk to their references, and they decide on one. Um, is You mentioned some red flags, right? You mentioned some things like royalties and some things like that. But anything else in kind of picking a publisher that you would recommend?
Well, the big word is royalty. If someone says
Mm,
they're going to pay you a royalty, you need to ask more questions. How are you calculating that royalty? Right? And I can tell every author here right now, if you go to kdp.com and you go to ingramspark.com, they both have calculators. You can plug in the details for your book, the trim size, the approximate page count, and you can see what the full compensation will be if you manage your own distribution
incredible.
the way we work, and you will see the difference. I promise you. I talk to authors who are being paid 90 cents for every book sold. And it
Wow.
should be more like $5.
And how about creating more content like a class on top of the book? I hear that's very popular these days.
Yeah, I mean, you could. We live in a wonderful world, right? People can do any and as much work as they want, in order to promote their business themselves in any way they want. It's truly wonderful.
Should we buy the book based on its cover?
People do buy the book based on
Yeah,
its cover, whether we want to admit it or not,
right.
and it's truly terrifying, right? Next time you go on Amazon, observe your own behavior. What makes you stop? The cover's job is to make you stop and learn more
Mm,
about the book. After that, the decision is entirely yours. You may or may not like what that book is about, but the cover makes you stop. And Amazon is also going to show best selling books alongside your book, even when people go to look specifically for your book. Amazon's
wow.
going to show the best selling titles that are similar. So your cover has to look like it was designed at that level.
Amazon has helped or hurt the publishing industry?
Oh, that's too big of a question for somebody like me. I don't know. It made self-publishing possible.
Right.
For that aspect, I really I think it's wonderful. Sometimes Amazon bites the hand that feeds it. You know,
Mm.
for me, I don't know why they sell used books right alongside authors' books.
Ah, that's right.
That seems like a slap in the face to me. But you know, they do what they do.
Huh. That's right. I do see that sometimes.
Always.
Yeah. But regardless of how you feel, they're responsible for 80% of the books sold. Is that worldwide?
I don't know. You got to give them. That's the number I heard. You've got to give them credit for that, right?
Yeah. And print on demand is huge.
Print on demand. When I started in this industry, there were hundreds of book printers. Now there might be a couple of dozen. So print on demand is wonderful. It's taken over that aspect of the business. You know,
If you're a promising author, Michelle, what are some topics you should kind of steer away from? I mean, well, let's talk about fiction. I mean, for a while, vampires was huge, and I don't know what happened there. But there's kind of these waves, these trends that kind of come in and out. Do you follow them? Do you?
well, you can go online and look and see what kinds of books are selling. But by the time if you
Right,
decide to enter a genre when it's selling well, chances are by the time you finish your book, it's oversaturated and you're
right.
really not doing yourself any favors. On the other side of that spectrum, if you go start doing research and you tell yourself there's no book in the world like mine, that's a danger signal too. It could mean there's no market for the book.
Mm.
So you want to be somewhere in between.
So there's so many self help books, right? That's a genre. In business, again, I'm in tech, but there's also so many marketing and sales. There's so many ancillary, subjects that people in the tech industry or any industry really need to understand. But there's no. If somebody went in and say, "I want to do this particular book," would you say no? Was there any particular books that you shouldn't do?
No, that's really up to the author. I mean,
Mm,
we've had a couple of instances where I rejected a manuscript, but not because I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, that's up to the author.
mm,
The I think that's the subjective part that I was
right.
talking about. There are thousands and thousands of titles on any topic, and that's where we need to make them stop. We need to make the buyer stop and at least consider whether our book is for them or not.
Mm. For television, they put they make a pilot, they put it in front of a bunch of focus groups, and then I mean, of course, we're talking about a different kind of monetary, you know, upfront money it costs, but you really don't see that in books, do we? Do we see focus groups working on books?
Oh, marketing people will do focus groups, sure.
Uh,
Sure. The major publishers have the money to do that, right? That's another benefit that they can bring, but it's difficult to get published by a traditional publisher. And that's why self-publishing is growing as fast as it is. There
but
was
it's remarkable. I'm sorry.
I was going to say there was something like 2 million books published recently.
Wow,
I think it was 2023.
wow. But it is remarkable, someone like yourself who's been inundated with all this technology and you've been able to adapt and keep up with it, and liking it or not is irrelevant because it's what's happening. But it's great that you've kind of made this pivot. I have talked to some others in the publishing industry who kind of want to hold on to the old way.
Well, we should hold on to the old standards, right?
Ah,
We use Macs, but
right.
we still work to the standard of traditional publishing, right? You can use a Mac and do junk work, or you can use a Mac and you can do beautiful quality work.
It's the only tool. Yeah. AI is going to help or hurt the industry.
I don't know. That's another big question. That's too big for my little brain. I think we're at the bleeding edge of it right now,
Right.
and so far it looks like it could be good or it could be bad. We'll see.
And as far as a large language model doing the editing versus a human, do you ever see that happening?
I don't think there's any substitute for a human's judgment. At
Mm,
least not yet. I may be dead wrong about that, but a human will find things that, well, will be able to say, you didn't quite explain yourself sufficiently here. I think you should
mm.
elaborate in this or that direction. That's what an editor does.
So I'm in the process. I pull back a little bit of, I did find a publisher, and I finished writing. We're in the editing process. The editing process is almost done. There was one particular area. So the older kind of, I don't know. I don't know how I should preface this, but um, so discipline is the theme of the podcast. I lost a lot of weight. I use discipline, and I kind of have this ongoing thesis that discipline is a spectrum. So I kind of get guests that I've had before, and I bring in what their thoughts are. So one of the editing kind of stoppages that we had an issue with is that one of my guests' pronouns are they, them. So when I wrote it, I used those pronouns, and the editor had a problem with that, saying your reader is not going to understand that. Is it a group of people? I said, no, it's one person. And so I said, well, let's just put a sentence before saying they prefer these pronouns. And they had a hard time with that. Thoughts?
I can't speak to that. I'm too old to understand the whole pronouns thing.
Yeah. But if somebody wants to be called that, I can't get in the way. And of course, I changed their names, right? So so it's not there. But editing went pretty smoothly. But that was one particular area that I didn't think there'd be an issue was, and there was, and there happened to be.
Well, to my ear, it sounds grammatically incorrect, right?
Right.
We use a collaboration platform, and I will invite myself to a project, right, according to the way it works, and it will send a message back to me that Michelle added themselves to the project, and that just makes me cringe.
Oh, grammarly.
Yeah, it matters to somebody, and they should be able to do that if that's what they want to do. But I don't have an opinion other than that.
Yeah, yeah. I mentioned before, the editing is it's just a long process, and there's many different editors. There's like grammar editors. There's different. There's layout editors, and
Yes,
there's just so many different names. And
yes.
what goes into a book before it's published is I'm finding is just absolutely amazing, and I never had appreciation before until I've gone
Oh
through it.
yeah, even today when I hold a finished book in my hands, it looks like it's easy. It looks like
Right.
it shouldn't take any time at all, but I know how much time went into it. Yeah. The important thing to remember is if you're looking around, you're an author, you're looking around and a publisher charges you to produce the book and pays you a royalty, you're probably in the wrong place.
Mm,
Now, if a publisher takes on your book, like a traditional publisher, and they pay all the experts and pay you a royalty, that's fine. That's a fair business model. It's when they take your money on both ends that there's an issue.
very interesting. Is there anything in recent month or so, Michelle, that you changed your mind on?
Oh, I change my mind all the time about everything. I'm always thinking. I don't sleep. I think all night long too.
Do you really?
Yes, I'm working on projects in the middle of the night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you authored books? I know you've got a small one that you release free on your website.
I do. I wrote Publish Like the Pros, and it's just a quick read, 88 pages, a survey of the publishing industry, what authors need to know. And I do give it away on my website because I want people to make whatever decision is best for them, but I want to make sure they have all the information.
Hmm. Well, you're right. Do you have other books in your head, or are you saying when you say you're creating at night, it's editing? What do you?
Usually project management.
Ah, right. The many people involved in one particular project and navigating them and herding all the cats.
Yes, I've been blessed. We have a great team. I have two project managers. We've done 4,000 books since 2001.
Wow,
So yeah, there's always something swirling around in my mind.
4,000 books since 2001.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That is
And
absolutely incredible.
I've been blessed. We've worked with some great authors. We just finished last year. We finished a book about Churchill,
Ah,
850 pages with thousands of footnotes. It
wow.
was great.
One of my favorite, topics. Yeah. What's what do authors find success in when writing? What's their goal oftentimes?
A lot of times, it's just that they wanted to get this book out of their head and into a
Mm,
tangible form. Right?
mm,
We worked with a dentist who we produced for him basically a dental textbook. It had 150 charts and graphs that we had to create for him. It was
wow.
just something he was passionate about and wanted it to be his life's work to be available to others, not just in his head.
It's really incredible to me. And I've talked to fiction authors, Michelle, and their process of they create these characters and they say things like the characters took over my pen as I was writing or just started speaking to me, and all of a sudden this character that I had no idea was there comes up and goes in a direction that I had no idea they would go into. It's absolutely amazing to me. It gives me chills.
I think fiction writing is much harder
Yeah,
than nonfiction because you have to create characters, you have to make sure they stay who they are from the
right.
beginning of the book to the end. That reminds me of a proofreading thing we did one time because we always proofread after the pages are typeset. And my proofreader one time found that an author had killed off a character in an early chapter, and then somehow that character magically returned to life
Whoa.
later on in the book, and she caught that. And so think of how hard it is though to do that, to write a book from beginning to end from your imagination. It's tough.
It really is. It really is. And when writing, how should the author view the reader? Should the reader be in their mind all the time as they're writing?
Well, especially for nonfiction, I would say yes, right? Because if you're writing a nonfiction book, you should have at least some concept in your mind of who needs this book. Why am I
Mm,
right? Who am I
mm,
trying to help with my topic? That's I think that's fundamental, right? Because you don't want to just write the book that you want or that you're interested in. What you want to do is identify a problem and then give the reader your unique take on how to solve that problem. That gives you a better chance to sell books uh, than, for example, a novel. A novel could appeal to anybody, even though there are fiction genres that some people prefer science fiction, others prefer
mm.
dramas, others prefer mysteries. I mean, yes, there's that, but I think fiction is a much harder sell.
What's coming down the road, Michelle? Will there be something as large as Amazon that's going to shake up the whole industry coming?
I don't have a crystal ball.
You don't see edges of something. Will AI have the biggest impact? Will any technology? Will there be? Do you think? I mean, because Amazon's been the biggest shakeup of the industry since its inception. Would you say?
Yes, absolutely. Since Gutenberg, anyway.
Since Gutenberg, since the actual printing press.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty much the beginning, isn't it? Yeah, and back then they were just printing Bibles, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, if it's hard to imagine that books were handwritten before
Right
then. And,
before that.
and so they were so expensive that only the rich could afford to buy a book. So Gutenberg changed all that.
Yeah, it certainly did. And then Amazon is the next big. You have these publishers and that we all know of, these large ones, but then Amazon really changed the playing field on it. It's
Yes.
it's fascinating to me. These big publishers, there's only about 4 or 5 of them, if I'm not mistaken, the biggest ones. They still Well, they wouldn't be around if they weren't making money. They still do well.
That's right, and they fill a need, right? If they tend to gravitate toward famous authors,
Right.
celebrities, politicians, whatever, who already have a huge platform. I spoke to a literary agent some time ago, and he said a major publisher won't consider you unless you already have 100,000 social media followers
Wow.
because they have a lot of expenses. They're not bad people. But they have a whole network of warehouses, distribution networks. They distribute books to bookstores. They have to take care of returns, which is an expensive thing. So it's a separate arm of the publishing industry. I think it's good that they're not the only aspect that's open to authors now. I think that's good for everybody.
Hmm. So Michelle, I started my business in the 90s. I'm in the tech industry and I was working way too hard. And as I mentioned before, I gained a lot of weight. I was at the doctor and I was up to 340 pounds.
Well,
Yeah, the doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. My daughter was just born. So I spent the next 6, 7 months, lost about 130 pounds and, kept it off. And people want a quick answer. How'd you do it? What's your secret? And of course, Michelle, there's no secret. Discipline. That's how I lost. That's how I keep it off. I got focus. I got restraint. I got a routine. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Michele.
oh, well, everybody jokes about Catholic school. I went to Catholic school for
Uh,
12 years, but I have to say they did impart discipline and values as part of the curriculum. It was understood that you just needed to buckle down and concentrate and accomplish what you were expected to accomplish. There was
mm,
no forgiveness if you didn't. So that has served me well, right? You're in business. There are times when you don't feel like working and you do it anyway because
mm,
you have to, and you can do it joyfully. Discipline doesn't mean you have a miserable life and you hate every minute of what you're doing. It means that you've got a goal in mind and you're working toward that goal. And that's really important no matter what you do for a living.
it certainly is. That's a really, yeah, discipline is related to Catholic school. And while it was very stringent and structured and uh deliberate, the end goal was met for you. It did what it sought out to do.
Yeah, I mean the jokes aren't entirely wrong.
Right.
It wasn't always pleasant,
Right.
but I think they put us all in the right direction.
Hmm. What motivates you, Michelle?
Doing a good job. I you
Mm.
know, I don't wanna be the biggest company, I just wanna be able to give everyone who comes to us the very best book we can give them.
Mm. And you succeeded most of the time?
Yes, yes, I would say so, because we always improve a book. Every book can be improved,
Right.
and we do that with the help of the author. It's always a collaboration. Now, we'll edit a manuscript like I described, doesn't mean the author has to accept all of those edits,
Mm.
but at least we offered it, and then the rest is up to them.
So, given that motivation, how do you measure success?
I measure success by how I feel at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Who did I help today? It's not only about money for me.
Impact.
Impact. Just do a good job. Make the world a better place in whatever way you can, in whatever small way you can. I don't have
Hmm.
any illusions that we're big or famous or changing the world. We're just making good books.
Right. Well, I was excited when we set this up. It's a very interesting area. We all read books. We've all got our favorite books, and whether it's digital now, whether it's you're listening to them, it's still a book at its core, and it's an important part of our life. And I wish it to continue. I thank you so much for your time. Anybody listening and they're interested in contacting you, how do they do so?
They can go to 1106design.com. That's my website. They can download my free book, Published Like the Pros. They can see our design samples. I post my prices on my website. I believe in complete transparency in that regard. There's no bait and switch or anything like that. And I have lots of educational blog posts. And you can also book a free consultation. If you do, I promise we're not going to start sending you 5 emails a day and start pressuring you. We'll have a conversation. If it's a great fit, we'll work together. If it's not, that's okay too. We will always respect you.
Certainly. 1106design.com. You're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn. I'll make sure we put all that in the show notes. Michele, thank you so much for your time. And whenever I'm in the greater Phoenix area in the future, perhaps we'll have a cup of tea.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me, Joey.
You be well.
You too.
Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word, discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission? How do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision, growth through learning from others.